Jeremy Pavel adjusted his tie as he boarded the crowded flight to Florida. His polished shoes clicked against the floor of the narrow aisle as he made his way to his assigned seat. As an undercover security agent, he was used to blending in, but today's mission required him to maintain a low profile while observing the passengers and crew. As he approached his seat, Jeremy froze. A middle-aged white man was comfortably settled in the spot that should have been his. Jeremy double-checked his boarding pass, confirming he was at the right place. "Excuse me, sir," he said politely. "I believe you're in my seat." The man looked up, his expression a mix of confusion and annoyance. "No, this is definitely my seat. See?" He thrust his boarding pass at Jeremy. Jeremy examined it, noticing the seat number matched his own. Realizing there must have been a mistake, he flagged down a passing flight attendant. "Excuse me, miss. There seems to be a mix-up with the seating." Catherine, the flight attendant, was already frazzled from the chaotic boarding process. She glanced between Jeremy and the seated passenger, her brow furrowing. "What seems to be the problem?" Jeremy explained the situation calmly, but Catherine's stress levels were rising. She barely listened to his explanation before making a snap decision. "Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to deplane. We can sort this out at the gate." Jeremy was taken aback. "But I have a valid ticket and—" Catherine cut him off. "Please, sir, we need to get this flight moving. I'm sure we can find you another flight." As Jeremy tried to argue his case, murmurs rippled through the nearby passengers. Some defended Jeremy, pointing out the unfairness of the situation. Others criticized him for holding up the flight. The atmosphere in the cabin grew tense, with passengers taking sides and voicing their opinions. "This isn't right," a young woman 2 rows back said loudly. "He has a ticket just like everyone else." "Just get off the plane, man," another passenger grumbled. "You're making us all late." The debate intensified, with more passengers joining in. Some shared their own experiences of discrimination, while others argued about the proper protocol for such situations. The once quiet cabin had become a hotbed of conflicting opinions and rising tensions. Jeremy, caught in the middle of this unexpected storm, realized that his undercover mission had taken an unforeseen turn. As he was escorted off the plane, he couldn't help but wonder how this incident would unfold and what consequences it might have for everyone involved. As Jeremy was led away from the aircraft, he paused near a window, turning to observe the scene unfolding inside the plane. Through the small oval porthole, he could see the animated gestures and heated expressions of the passengers. The cabin, once a picture of orderly boarding, had transformed into a microcosm of societal tensions. Inside, Catherine struggled to regain control of the situation. Her voice, usually calm and authoritative, now carried a note of desperation as she tried to quiet the increasingly vocal passengers. "Please, everyone, return to your seats. We need to prepare for takeoff." But her pleas fell on deaf ears. The incident had sparked a powder keg of emotions and personal experiences that refused to be silenced. A middle-aged woman stood up, her voice quavering with emotion. "This isn't just about one man or one flight. This is about the countless times people like him, and me, have been treated unfairly because of the color of our skin." Her words resonated with many passengers, who nodded in agreement. Others shifted uncomfortably in their seats, avoiding eye contact. The discussion evolved, with passengers sharing their own stories of discrimination and prejudice. An elderly woman, her white hair neatly pinned back, slowly rose from her seat. Her eyes glistened with unshed tears as she began to speak. "I remember when my grandson, bright as a button and kind as can be, was accused of shoplifting just because he was in the wrong neighborhood. The store owner didn't even give him a chance to explain. It broke my heart to see the light go out of his eyes that day." Her story hung in the air, heavy with the weight of shared pain and injustice. It prompted others to speak up, each tale a thread in the complex tapestry of race relations in America. A young college student chimed in, "Last semester, my professor assumed I was only in his class because of affirmative action. He didn't even consider that I might have earned my place there." As the stories continued, the atmosphere in the cabin shifted. The initial anger and frustration gave way to a somber reflection. Passengers who had been quick to judge Jeremy now sat in contemplative silence, confronted with the reality of their own biases and the pervasive nature of discrimination. Catherine, overwhelmed by the outpouring of emotions, found herself at a loss. Her training hadn't prepared her for this level of social discourse mid-flight. She realized that her hasty decision to remove Jeremy had opened a Pandora's box of unresolved societal issues. Outside, Jeremy watched the scene with a mix of frustration and fascination. He had encountered discrimination before, but never had he seen it spark such an immediate and passionate response. As an undercover agent, he was trained to observe and analyze, and now he found himself doing just that, not for a security threat, but for a complex social dynamic playing out before his eyes. The incident that began as a simple seating dispute had evolved into something much larger, forcing everyone involved to confront uncomfortable truths about prejudice, privilege, and the power of speaking out against injustice. As the plane touched down in Florida, Jeremy stood near the gate, his mind racing with the implications of what had transpired. He watched as passengers disembarked, their faces a mix of exhaustion and lingering tension from the flight's events. Just as he was considering his next move, a stern-looking man in a crisp uniform approached him. "Mr. Pavel?" the man asked, his voice clipped and professional. "I'm John Reeves, supervisor for the airline. I need you to come with me, please." Jeremy nodded, his training kicking in as he assessed the situation. As they walked towards a private office, he noticed Catherine being escorted in the same direction by another staff member. Her usually composed demeanor was gone, replaced by visible nervousness. In the office, Jeremy was asked to wait while Catherine was led into an adjacent room. Through the thin walls, he could hear snippets of conversation, the words disciplinary action and company policy drifting through. Inside the other room, Catherine sat rigid in her chair, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. The head of human resources, a woman named Linda, sat across from her, a folder open on the desk between them. "Catherine, we need to discuss the incident on Flight 1382, Linda began, her tone serious. "We've received multiple complaints about your handling of a seating dispute with a passenger." Catherine's voice trembled slightly as she responded, "I was just trying to keep the flight on schedule. Things got out of hand so quickly." Linda leaned forward. "Catherine, the passenger you removed from the flight wasn't just any passenger. He was an undercover security agent conducting a routine check." The color drained from Catherine's face as the implications of this revelation sank in. Her mind raced back to the moment she'd made the decision to remove Jeremy, replaying every detail with newfound horror. I had no idea," she stammered, her professional facade crumbling. Linda's expression softened slightly. "We understand that your job can be stressful, but your actions today have serious implications. Not only did you discriminate against a passenger, but you also compromised a security operation." As Catherine struggled to process this information, Jeremy sat in the other room, overhearing parts of the conversation. He felt a mix of emotions, frustration at being removed from the flight, concern about the operation he'd been forced to abandon, but also a growing curiosity about the deeper issues this incident had brought to light. The supervisor, Reeves, turned to Jeremy. "Agent Pavel, we apologize for this unfortunate incident. Rest assured, we're taking this very seriously." Jeremy nodded, his mind already working on how to turn this situation into an opportunity for change. "I appreciate that, Mr. Reeves, but I think there's more we need to address here than just one flight attendant's actions." Reeves raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "What do you mean?" "The reaction from the other passengers, the stories they shared. It's clear this incident touched on some deep-seated issues," Jeremy explained. "Maybe we should be looking at this as a chance to implement some real changes in how your airline handles diversity and inclusion." As Jeremy spoke, he could hear Catherine's muffled sobs from the other room. He realized that this incident had the potential to be more than just a disciplinary issue. It could be the catalyst for meaningful change, not just for the airline, but for everyone involved. In the adjacent room, Catherine's composure had completely crumbled. Faced with the gravity of her actions, she found herself pouring out years of pent-up emotions and experiences. "You don't understand," she said, her voice shaky. "I've always tried to do my job fairly, but there's so much you don't see, so much that happens behind the scenes." Linda leaned in, her stern demeanor softening slightly. "Tell me, Catherine, what don't we see?" Catherine took a deep breath, steadying herself. 2 years ago, I was stopped by the police on my way home from a late shift. The officer was aggressive, accusing me of being in a drug area. He didn't believe I was a flight attendant, said I was lying. I was terrified. Her words hung in the air, heavy with the weight of her fear and frustration. Ever since then, I've been jumpy around authority figures. When Jeremy approached me on the plane, all those feelings came rushing back. I reacted out of fear, not racism. But I know that doesn't make it right. In the other room, Jeremy could hear Catherine's confession. His professional demeanor faltered for a moment as he recognized the complexity of the situation. It wasn't just about one incident on a plane. It was about a web of experiences and traumas that shaped people's actions and reactions. Reeves, noticing Jeremy's change in expression, asked, "Agent Pavel, what are your thoughts on this?" Jeremy chose his words carefully. It's clear that this situation is more complicated than it initially appeared. Catherine's actions were wrong, but they stem from a place of fear and past trauma. It's a reminder that we all carry our histories with us, and they can affect our judgment in critical moments. As Jeremy spoke, the door opened, and Linda stepped out, motioning for Jeremy to join them. In the room, Catherine sat with red-rimmed eyes, looking both vulnerable and determined. Jeremy entered, his presence causing Catherine to stiffen slightly. But as he began to speak, sharing some of his own experiences as a black man in law enforcement, the tension in the room gradually eased. "I've been on both sides of this," Jeremy explained. "I've faced discrimination, and I've also been in positions where my actions could be misconstrued as discriminatory. It's a delicate balance, and it requires constant self-reflection and education." Catherine nodded, wiping away a tear. "I never wanted to be that person, the one who judges unfairly. But I realize now that's exactly what I did. How do we move forward from this?" The conversation that followed was raw and honest. They discussed implicit biases, the impact of past experiences on present actions, and the need for better training and support systems within the airline industry. As they talked, Jeremy recalled the passengers' reactions during the flight. "You know," he said, "this incident affected more than just us. The other passengers, they opened up about their own experiences with discrimination. It sparked a real dialogue." Linda, who had been taking notes, looked up. "That's actually a valuable point. This could be an opportunity for broader change within our company culture." As the meeting wound down, a plan began to take shape. It wasn't just about disciplinary action anymore. It was about using this incident as a catalyst for meaningful change in how the airline approached issues of diversity, inclusion, and conflict resolution. Catherine, though still shaken, felt a glimmer of hope. "I want to be part of this change," she said firmly. "I want to learn, to do better." Jeremy nodded, a small smile on his face. "That's the first step, recognizing where we've gone wrong and committing to do better. It's not easy, but it's necessary." As they left the room, both Catherine and Jeremy realized that this incident, painful as it was, had the potential to create positive change, not just for them, but for the entire airline and perhaps even beyond. In the days following the incident, word spread among the passengers who had witnessed the events on the flight. Many felt compelled to take action, believing that their collective voice could make a difference. Led by the young law student who had spoken up during the flight, a group began to organize. "We can't let this moment pass without pushing for real change," the student, named Marcus, said during a video call with other interested passengers. "I propose we draft a letter to the airline's administration, outlining our concerns and demanding concrete steps towards better inclusivity and fairness." The idea quickly gained traction. Passengers from various backgrounds contributed their thoughts and experiences, each adding a unique perspective to the letter. The elderly woman who had shared her grandson's story became a passionate advocate, her voice carrying the weight of years of witnessed injustice. "We need to address not just this one incident," she insisted, "but the systemic issues that allow such situations to occur in the first place." Over the course of a week, the letter took shape. It called for comprehensive diversity training for all airline staff, clearer protocols for handling disputes, and the establishment of an independent review board to oversee complaints related to discrimination. The passengers also requested a public commitment from the airline to foster a more inclusive environment for both staff and travelers. As word of their efforts spread, more passengers came forward to sign the letter. Even those who had initially been silent or skeptical during the flight found themselves moved by the group's dedication and the personal stories shared. The final draft was a powerful document, blending personal narratives with concrete suggestions for improvement. It was signed by over 100 passengers, including Marcus, the elderly woman, and a diverse cross-section of travelers from the flight. Meanwhile, Catherine had been grappling with the aftermath of her actions. She had been placed on administrative leave, pending a full review, giving her time to reflect on the incident and its implications. When she learned about the passenger's letter, she felt a mix of shame and hope. Hesitantly, she reached out to the airline's HR department, asking to read the letter. As she pored over the document, tears welled up in her eyes. The stories shared by the passengers, their calls for change, and their willingness to engage in difficult conversations moved her deeply. In that moment, Catherine made a decision. She drafted her own letter to accompany the passenger's document, offering a heartfelt apology for her actions and expressing her commitment to learning and growing from the experience. "I realize now that my actions that day were not just a mistake, but a symptom of deeper issues that need to be addressed," she wrote. "I am fully committed to being part of the solution and to helping our airline become a leader in inclusivity and fairness." Catherine's letter, raw and honest, added another layer to the passengers' call for change. It demonstrated that even those who had made mistakes could be part of the solution if they were willing to acknowledge their faults and work towards improvement. As the combined letters made their way to the airline's top management, there was a sense of anticipation among all involved. They knew that this could be a turning point, not just for the airline, but for how the industry as a whole approached issues of diversity and inclusion. The incident that had started with a seating dispute had evolved into a movement for change, uniting passengers and staff in a common goal. It was a powerful reminder of how a single moment, handled with openness and a willingness to learn, could spark meaningful transformation. The impact of the passenger's letter, coupled with Catherine's heartfelt apology, reverberated through the airline's corporate offices. Unable to ignore the mounting pressure and recognizing the potential for positive change, the company's board of directors called for an emergency meeting to address the situation. In a spacious conference room overlooking the city skyline, executives and department heads gathered to discuss the path forward. The tension in the room was palpable as they reviewed the letters and the public relations implications of the incident. "We can't sweep this under the rug," said Sarah Chin, the newly appointed head of corporate responsibility. "This is an opportunity to lead by example and make real, lasting changes in our industry." After hours of heated debate and careful consideration, the board reached a decision. They would not only implement the changes suggested in the letter, but go a step further by launching a comprehensive initiative to promote diversity, equity, and inclusion throughout the company. The CEO, Michael Thompson, stood at the head of the table. "It's time we address these issues head-on. I want us to become the gold standard for inclusivity in the airline industry." As part of this new initiative, the company announced the formation of a diversity and inclusion task force. To everyone's surprise, they asked Catherine to play a key role in this group. The decision was met with mixed reactions, but the board stood firm in their belief that Catherine's experience and subsequent commitment to change made her an invaluable asset to the team. When Catherine received the news, she was overwhelmed with emotion. "I never expected this," she said, her voice trembling, "but I promise to do everything in my power to make things right and help create positive change." Jeremy, who had been keeping a close eye on the developments, was also invited to join the task force as an external consultant. His unique perspective as both a law enforcement officer and a victim of discrimination was seen as invaluable to the process. "I'm honored to be part of this initiative," Jeremy said during a press conference announcing the changes. "It's a testament to the power of open dialogue and the willingness to confront uncomfortable truths." The task force's first order of business was to overhaul the company's training programs. They brought in experts in unconscious bias, cultural competency, and conflict resolution to develop a comprehensive curriculum for all employees, from ground staff to executives. Catherine found herself at the forefront of these efforts, sharing her story as a cautionary tale and a springboard for discussions about personal growth and accountability. Her vulnerability and willingness to learn resonated with many of her colleagues, opening up deeper conversations about race, prejudice, and the impact of past experiences on present actions. Jeremy, drawing from his law enforcement background, helped develop new protocols for handling disputes and potential security issues. He emphasized the importance of clear communication, de-escalation techniques, and the need to consider multiple perspectives before making decisions. As word of the airline's initiative spread, it began to attract attention from other companies in the industry. What had started as a response to a crisis was quickly becoming a model for corporate responsibility and social awareness. The passengers who had written the original letter were invited to participate in focus groups and provide ongoing feedback on the company's progress. Many, including Marcus and the elderly woman, became vocal advocates for the airline's new approach, sharing their experiences on social media and in interviews. As the months passed, the airline began to see tangible results from their efforts. Employee satisfaction scores improved, customer complaints related to discrimination decreased, and the company's reputation for inclusivity grew stronger. For Catherine, Jeremy, and all those involved, it was a powerful reminder of how a moment of crisis could be transformed into an opportunity for growth and positive change. The journey was far from over, but they had taken the first crucial steps towards creating a more inclusive and equitable environment, not just for one airline, but for the industry as a whole. As the Diversity and Inclusion Task Force gained momentum, Catherine found herself at the center of a whirlwind of activity. Her days were filled with meetings, workshops, and intense discussions as she worked alongside a team of experts to reshape the company's approach to diversity. One sunny morning, Catherine sat in a conference room surrounded by a diverse group of consultants. Dr. Amina Patel, a renowned sociologist specializing in workplace dynamics, led the session. Today, we're going to dive deep into the concept of microaggressions and how they impact our daily interactions, Dr. Patel began. As the group engaged in role-playing exercises and analyzed case studies, Catherine felt a mix of discomfort and enlightenment. She realized how many subtle forms of discrimination she had both experienced and, unknowingly, perpetrated throughout her career. During a break, Catherine approached Dr. Patel. "I never realized how much damage these small actions could cause," she admitted. "How do we effectively communicate this to all our employees?" Dr. Patel smiled encouragingly. "That's exactly the right question to ask, Catherine. And part of the answer lies in personal stories. Your journey, for instance, could be a powerful teaching tool." Inspired by this conversation, Catherine worked with the team to develop a series of training modules that incorporated real-life experiences from employees at all levels of the company. She decided to take the lead in one of the first sessions, sharing her own story with a group of fellow flight attendants. Standing before her colleagues, Catherine took a deep breath. "I want to tell you about the day I made a terrible mistake and how it opened my eyes to the biases I didn't even know I had," she began. As she recounted the incident with Jeremy and its aftermath, she could see the impact her words were having on the room. Some nodded in recognition, others looked shocked, but all were deeply engaged. After she finished, the room erupted in discussion. Flight attendants shared their own experiences, both as victims of discrimination and times when they might have acted on unconscious biases. The session, originally scheduled for an hour, stretched well into the afternoon as the group delved into honest, sometimes uncomfortable, but ultimately transformative conversations. Word of Catherine's session spread quickly through the company. Soon, other departments were requesting similar workshops. The human resources team worked overtime to schedule sessions and train facilitators to meet the growing demand. Meanwhile, the impact of the company's initiatives began to ripple outward. Passengers started to notice changes in how they were treated, from the language used in announcements to the way conflicts were handled. Many took to social media to share their positive experiences, contrasting them with past incidents of discrimination they'd faced while traveling. One day, as Catherine was reviewing feedback from a recent training session, she received an unexpected email. It was from the elderly woman who had shared her grandson's story during the fateful flight. The woman wrote about how she had recently flown with the airline and was moved by the visible changes in staff behavior and policies. She thanked Catherine for her part in bringing about this transformation, Tears welled up in Catherine's eyes as she read the email. It was a poignant reminder of how far they'd come, but also of how much work still lay ahead. As the movement gained traction, more employees began to come forward with their stories. A baggage handler shared his experience of being passed over for promotions due to his accent. A pilot discussed the subtle ways she had been undermined as a woman in a male-dominated field. Each story added another layer to the company's understanding of the challenges they faced and the changes needed. The task force used these insights to continually refine their approach, creating more nuanced training programs and policy changes. They also established a confidential reporting system for employees to share concerns or incidents of discrimination, ensuring that issues could be addressed promptly and sensitively. Catherine, once dreading each day as a reminder of her mistake, now found herself looking forward to the challenges and growth each new day brought. She realized that the journey towards true inclusivity was ongoing, requiring constant vigilance and willingness to learn. But with each small victory, each mind opened and perspective changed, she felt the airline moving steadily towards a more equitable future. As the airline's diversity initiative gained momentum, Jeremy found himself increasingly involved in its implementation. Drawing from his unique background in law enforcement and his personal experiences, he became a powerful advocate for change within the company. One crisp autumn morning, Jeremy stood before a packed auditorium of airline employees, ranging from pilots to ground crew. Today, he began, his voice clear and confident, we're going to talk about the intersection of security, customer service, and racial bias. Over the next 2 hours, Jeremy led the group through a series of scenarios and discussions. He shared anecdotes from his own career, highlighting instances where unconscious bias had influenced decision-making in high-pressure situations. The employees listened intently, many nodding in recognition of similar experiences. It's not about pointing fingers or assigning blame, Jeremy emphasized. It's about recognizing these patterns so we can actively work to change them. After the session, a young security officer approached Jeremy. I never realized how much my own background was influencing my actions, he admitted. How do you suggest we start making changes in our daily work? Jeremy smiled, appreciating the officer's candor. It starts with self-awareness, he replied. Question your initial reactions, especially in tense situations. And don't be afraid to ask for a second opinion if you're unsure. As Jeremy's influence grew, he was invited to speak at industry conferences and events. His talks on balancing security and inclusivity in the age of global travel became must-attend sessions, drawing attendees from airlines around the world. Meanwhile, Catherine had fully embraced her role as a champion for diversity within the company. She spearheaded a mentorship program pairing experienced staff with new hires from underrepresented backgrounds, ensuring that diversity was nurtured at all levels of the organization. One sunny afternoon, Catherine found herself standing on a stage at a large convention center, preparing to address a crowd at an airline industry diversity summit. As she scanned the audience, she spotted a familiar face, Jeremy, sitting in the front row, giving her an encouraging nod. A year ago, Catherine began, her voice steady despite her nerves, I was at the center of an incident that could have ended my career. Instead, it became the catalyst for profound change, not just for me, but for our entire organization. She went on to detail the airline's journey, from the initial crisis to the comprehensive changes they had implemented. As she spoke, she could see the impact her words were having on the audience. Some were taking furious notes, while others nodded in agreement or whispered to their neighbors. After the presentation, Catherine and Jeremy found themselves surrounded by attendees eager to learn more about their experiences and initiatives. As they fielded questions, they exchanged a glance, both recognizing how far they had come from that tense moment on the plane. Later that evening, Catherine and Jeremy sat in the hotel bar, reflecting on the day's events. Did you ever imagine we'd end up here when you first boarded that flight? Catherine asked, a hint of wonder in her voice. Jeremy chuckled, shaking his head. Never in a million years. But I'm glad we did. We're making a real difference, Catherine. As they continued to chat, they realized that their journey had only just begun. The changes they had implemented at their airline were starting to inspire similar initiatives across the industry. Other companies were reaching out for advice and collaboration, creating a ripple effect of positive change. However, they also acknowledged the challenges that lay ahead. Resistance to change was still present in pockets of the organization and the broader industry. Some employees and executives were skeptical of the new initiatives, viewing them as unnecessary or even detrimental to efficiency. Jeremy leaned forward, his expression serious. "We can't get complacent. This is a long-term commitment, and we need to keep pushing forward." Catherine nodded in agreement. "You're right, but look at how far we've come already. I truly believe we can create lasting change if we keep at it." As they parted ways that evening, both Catherine and Jeremy felt a renewed sense of purpose. They had transformed a moment of conflict into a movement for positive change, and they were determined to see it through, no matter the obstacles ahead. The airline's progressive initiatives had begun to attract attention beyond the industry. News outlets picked up on the story, highlighting the company's transformation from a point of controversy to a leader in corporate diversity and inclusion. The positive press coverage boosted the airline's reputation and led to an increase in customer loyalty. Impressed by the changes, the company's board of directors decided to implement an even more comprehensive diversity program. They allocated substantial resources to expand their efforts, aiming to become an industry benchmark for inclusive practices. One morning, as Catherine was reviewing the latest diversity training materials in her office, she received an urgent call from the PR department. "Catherine, we have a situation," the voice on the other end said tensely. "An anonymous source has leaked details of the original incident with Jeremy to the media. It's about to break." Catherine felt her heart race as she rushed to an emergency meeting with the executive team. The room was filled with a mix of anxiety and determination as they discussed how to handle the impending media storm. "We need to get ahead of this," the CEO stated firmly. "We've made real progress, and we can't let this setback derail our efforts." As they strategized, Jeremy was brought into the loop. His perspective as the victim of the original incident would be crucial in shaping their response. "We shouldn't try to hide from this," Jeremy advised. "Let's use it as an opportunity to showcase how far we've come and reaffirm our commitment to do better." The team worked tirelessly to craft a statement that acknowledged the past mistake while emphasizing the positive changes that had resulted from it. They decided to hold a press conference to address the issue head-on. As news of the incident spread, social media exploded with opinions. Some praised the airline for its subsequent actions, while others called for boycotts and further investigations. The controversy reignited discussions about racial profiling and corporate responsibility across the country. On the day of the press conference, Catherine stood beside the CEO, her hands shaking slightly as she faced a sea of reporters and flashing cameras. "Yes, a grave mistake was made," she began, her voice growing stronger with each word. "But from that mistake, we've created meaningful change. We're not perfect, but we're committed to doing better every day." She went on to detail the specific initiatives the company had implemented, from revised training programs to new hiring practices and accountability measures. As she spoke, she could see the skepticism on some faces begin to soften. Jeremy then took the podium, his presence adding weight to Catherine's words. He shared his perspective on the incident and the company's response, emphasizing the importance of turning negative experiences into opportunities for growth and change. "What happened to me was unacceptable," Jeremy stated clearly, "but the response from this company has been exemplary. They didn't just offer empty apologies, they took concrete action to address the root causes of discrimination." As the press conference concluded, there was a palpable shift in the room. The narrative was changing from one of scandal to one of redemption and progress. Reporters clamored for more details about the company's diversity programs, eager to understand how other organizations might learn from their example. In the days that followed, the airline faced both praise and criticism. Some activists argued that the changes didn't go far enough, while others hailed the company as a model for corporate responsibility. The controversy sparked a broader national conversation about diversity in the workplace and the airline industry's role in shaping social norms. Amidst the media frenzy, Catherine received an unexpected call. It was from a rival airline, asking if she would be willing to consult on their own diversity initiatives. "Your handling of this situation has been impressive," the caller said. "We'd like to learn from your experience." As Catherine hung up the phone, she felt a mix of pride and humility. The incident that had once threatened to end her career had instead become a catalyst for industry-wide change. She realized that their work was far from over, but for the first time, she felt truly hopeful about the future. The aftermath of the press conference brought a whirlwind of activity for the airline. As the dust began to settle, the company found itself at a crossroads, facing both unprecedented scrutiny and opportunity. Catherine, now recognized as a key figure in the company's transformation, was asked to participate in a televised interview to further discuss the airline's journey. As she prepared for the broadcast, she reflected on how much had changed since that fateful day on the plane. The interview, aired on a major news network, drew a massive audience. Catherine spoke candidly about the incident, her own biases, and the hard work of changing corporate culture. "We're not just implementing surface-level changes," she explained. "We're digging deep, questioning every aspect of our operations to ensure we're truly inclusive." As Catherine's segment ended, the interviewer announced a surprise guest, Jeremy. He joined the conversation, adding his perspective on the company's evolution. "What impresses me most," Jeremy said, "is that they didn't stop at just fixing one incident. They've committed to ongoing, systemic change." The joint appearance of Catherine and Jeremy, once on opposite sides of a controversy, now united in purpose, resonated strongly with viewers. Social media exploded with positive reactions, with many calling for other companies to follow suit. However, not everyone was pleased with the direction the airline was taking. The day after the interview, Catherine received word that her immediate supervisor, Tom Nielsen, had raised concerns about the resources being allocated to diversity initiatives. He argued that they were distracting from core business operations and hurting the bottom line. A meeting was called to address these concerns. Catherine and Jeremy, along with several members of the diversity task force, presented data showing how the new policies had actually improved employee satisfaction, reduced turnover, and even led to increased customer loyalty. Despite the evidence, Tom remained skeptical. "This is all well and good," he said dismissively, "but we're an airline, not a social justice organization. We need to focus on flying planes, not winning popularity contests." The room fell silent at Tom's words. Then, to everyone's surprise, the CEO spoke up. "Tom," he said firmly, "if you can't see how these initiatives are crucial to our future success, then perhaps it's time we reevaluate your position in this company." The message was clear. The commitment to diversity and inclusion was non-negotiable. In the weeks that followed, Tom was transitioned out of his role, replaced by a leader who better aligned with the company's new values. This decisive action sent shockwaves through the industry. It signaled that the airline was serious about its commitment, willing to make tough decisions to uphold its principles. As news of Tom's departure spread, Catherine found herself fielding calls from employees at all levels of the organization. Many expressed relief and renewed enthusiasm for the company's direction. Others shared concerns about potential backlash or uncertainty about how to navigate the changing landscape. Recognizing the need for ongoing dialogue, Catherine worked with HR to establish regular town hall meetings where employees could voice their thoughts and concerns openly. These sessions became a valuable forum for addressing misconceptions, sharing success stories, and collaboratively problem-solving. Meanwhile, Jeremy's role continued to evolve. He was offered a permanent position as the company's chief diversity officer, a role he accepted with both excitement and a sense of responsibility. "We've made great strides," he said during the announcement, "but we have to remember that this work is never truly finished. We must remain vigilant and continue to push for progress." As the year drew to a close, the airline received a prestigious award for its diversity and inclusion efforts. During the acceptance speech, Catherine and Jeremy stood side by side, a powerful symbol of how far they'd come. "This award isn't just for us," Catherine said, her voice filled with emotion. "It's for every employee who embraced change, every passenger who shared their story, and every individual who believes in the power of inclusivity." Jeremy nodded in agreement. "We started this journey because of a mistake, but we continue it because it's the right thing to do. Our hope is that our story inspires others to examine their own practices and commit to creating more inclusive environments." As they left the stage, Catherine and Jeremy exchanged a look of mutual respect and determination. They knew that challenges lay ahead, but they were ready to face them together, committed to continuing the work of transforming not just their airline, but the entire industry.